see your first prawns in a minute. Oh, there's a whole bunch of them. Ready? Ready? What's this? What is that? What's that? Okay. That's more. Well, what's this? What's that? Hey, are you chewing that? Is that yours? Huh? She knows where the good part is. She's natural. Oh my gosh. What do you think, puppy? Oh, I get to sort through them and see who's gonna come home, huh? Look at this one. Nice juicy big prawn there, isn't it? Yeah, no. Hey, oh, good one. Huh? Yeah. So, here's my travel partner. This is how she usually is 99% of the time, and she had her first bear experience last evening, and she started going crazy in the truck without seeing one. And she smelt one. We thought she smelled one. Me and my friend are driving around looking for bears and stuff. And then she's just going absolutely nuts after sitting here all calm like this forever. And then a few more kilometers on, she did it again. And then a few more kilometers, we saw a big bear on the road, running down the road, and we didn't say nothing. And we waited for her reaction. We got to where that bear was. She went absolutely crazy again. It's funny what a dog knows, what they smell. Imagine having the nose of a dog. So anyway, we're going back up this long road again, and it'll be interesting. I'll show you guys what she does with a bear. All right, come here. Oops. Bug's definitely out. Heck, luckily I had some bug dope in the truck. My sidekick hangs out for this. Now, the internet's been really challenging where I am. Really challenging. Okay, I've got some recent ones on this phone. The other phone's Hoop. This is my old phone again. This is really weird. I caught the pictures before I read it. Now, we mark this as red. Now listen to this. These are a couple of photos taken totally accidentally by my daughter and her friend in North Queensland using a cheap disposable film camera. There was only my daughter and her friend in the pool at the time. They got the film developed and noticed this little hand. Look at the colors of the hand and the shadow of my daughter's fingers on the hand. This is not a fake. This is the real deal from another dimension, though this may fill a piece of the puzzle for some people about parallel dimensions it exists. And how this allowed itself to be caught on camera is amazing. Keep it for yourself or share it, that's up to you. Regards, John Bartholomew. I've had many paranormal and supernatural experiences and have seen a dog man run across the road 30 meters from me and seen a UFO fly straight over the top of our boat one night while going crabbing in New Caledonia. Pool. What kind of pool? Is it a pool in a river or a creek that looks like a three-fingered hand with a thumb? Possible. I don't know. Is it a dead body? Should you go back there to see if there's a corpse in there? How bizarre is that? How bizarre photos and email. Obviously there's no way for us to prove that legitimate or fake or not, or who knows, right? That is bizarre. I would strongly suggest somebody go back to that pool and see if there is a decaying corpse there, right? Very bizarre. Now, this next one is now titled Red. I think Adventure Dog knows the routine by now with maybe making a video. We're right in the middle of the bear zone. Right behind me is where I normally fish, you guys, and all those beaches behind me, I filmed bears on those beaches from my video camera. The beginning of the West Coast Trail is back in that bay, and if you want to Google it up, that is Pachina Beach. It's far to my left. You're right. That's Barkley Sound and the Broken Island group behind me. This is the first time I've been up here looking down on all those fishing spots. It's kind of weird for me. You can see my halibut spot way over there. Now, let's get into this one. Lie detector guy who's wrote up in greater detail, and the grammar should make for a great read. Infrasound Insight, all sightings listed. Alright, so this is the man who was tormented for a long time by whatever the heck it was, and supplied his lie detector test, all of his personal details, everything. He's written back to us. Hi Steve, I've corrected a bit more of the grammar for you in the same second email below. Alright, here we go. Hi Steve, this is a long one, but worth it, my friend. Thanks again. I want to share my sincere thank you to you for reading out my ordeal which I sent in. It was complete with a lie detector test I paid for and passed because I value my integrity. Plus, what I went through, which still happens to this day, as it goes, is an ordeal which sounds batshit crazy. I wrote my ordeal up about 2 years ago, and at that time I thought my ordeal had ended, but I will get to all that in greater detail. Just to skim over and remind your viewers, I had these mighty beings turn on me after I kept irritating them, knowing too much and ignoring warning signs. That happened in March 2020, right as the UK was put into a strict lockdown. The worst possible time for me, and at a time which gave me free run to these cryptids, which turned on me. Can I just correct one mistake you made while reading out my ordeal? Get up here. Come on. Come here. Sit. Stay. Good girl. That happened in March 2020, right as the UK... Okay, sorry. I wrote that I'd been victim to a shocking amount of hours, and I stated to be upwards of 1,000 hours. Please bear with me whilst I run some figures and explain how I get to such a number. In Matlock, they harassed me in numbers, and it began right from the start as a team versus me. Mainly during the nighttime at first, but it did not take long until I was being harassed during the daytime too. I'll get into a lot more detail in this email because I want to bring to light the evil intent and the powerful abilities of these mighty beings. Infrasound is a very powerful weapon and one that is near on impossible to fully defend against, but I will get into what you can do to minimize its effects later in this email. Alright, give me 1 second. 1 second. I'm going to put the dog on the flat ground there so I don't have to mind her, which is going to take my attention away. Should be a lot better for her if I just put her on that soft stuff down there and give her something to chew on. I know, some people are going to be so annoyed with me and the dog in this video. People that don't realize there's a fast forward button on their computer option on that YouTube app. Okay. Come here. All right. Now, let's take, for example, that 3 beings turned up and began going wild outside my home when darkness dropped at 7:30 p.m. and continued this harassment with evil intent all night long. If I continued up till mid-morning, oh sorry, I must have meant it continued up until mid-morning, so 15 hours times 3 beings. That's 45 hours right there. I've now suffered 11 months total. That's over 300 nights and days, although there has been occasions when I've not been harassed that night for whatever reason. 45 by 10 is 450 hours. You can hopefully see the maths, which I think is important here. They harassed me with evil intent, so much so that I got driven out of my home in Matlock where I lived for 8 years. It took 3 months of continual harassment to drive me from that home. I was never going to go early, but they won. Matlock was the only place where they harassed me in numbers. A team of cryptids against just me, and it was hell. I then moved to a roof apartment 12 miles away, only to discover that they had the ability to follow me there, the hitchhiker effect. And it was at that point that I discovered the supernatural abilities of these crazy, powerful monsters. I was subject to a further 4 months of hell there. I really had to fight for my mind and sanity. That's for sure. I thought it all ended for me when I was whisked away to my brother's, and I had to go off work with stress and anxiety for a period of 4 months. So many bugs here, it's crazy. The reason for that was to recover from the otherworldly hell I'd been put through, but also because I was scared to go back to work due to them harassing me at work, which was the final straw for me. I was left alone for like 2 years, but they still harass me to this day, albeit to a lesser degree. All 2023 has been a hellish ordeal for me, and it is like these beings delight in bullying me. Their hatred for me is very real and evident in the efforts they are still willing to go to all this time later. Their abilities to get to me at every home is mind-blowing. I will get to that further into this email. If people do the rough maths, here they will appreciate that I've been subjected to a crazy amount of interaction with these monsters. Way over 1,000 hours has been devoted to harassing me. That is not a boast, because I have been through hell at the hands of these supernatural, sadistic monsters. I have witnessed and become very knowledgeable on these beings during countless intense battles, and I can admit that I have been defeated to a degree I would not want anyone else to suffer. I have suffered so much, and I came very close to giving up and wanting to be dead after the 3 months in Matlock, combined with the further 4 months in the roof apartment. This is where I faced the realization that I now had a supernatural monster on my roof, launching its foul frequency at me every waking hour. Pretty much. No exaggeration. I don't exaggerate, I don't lie. There will be a great amount of insight in this email, yet I can assure and promise that every detail written is fact and truth. Remember, the golden question I chose to take in my lie detector test was, have I ever lied about my Bigfoot experience? I stated I had not knowingly told a single lie, and I passed. No deception indicated. I'm not about to start lying now. My word is my honor, and I value my straight talking, my honesty, and also my integrity. There will be a lot of insight into the abilities of these beings within this email, and it will be a lengthy read, but then I have been victim to a total of 11 intense months battling these evil beings, so I obviously have witnessed lots. If we can take a moment to communicate across the dirty, low-down weapon that is infrasound, since that has been the weapon always used with terrible effect. I stated in my previous email that after the night that I chased them down on my e-bike and stupidly set up a game camera right opposite my home with the infrared light covered, in expectation that they would return back down the train line opposite my home, well, that game camera did not capture them, but it was tapped on multiple times by the wild man so as to let me know that I had been caught yet again. The night before they came harassing me, I was laid on my settee late at night, and I could see what looked like 2 beings swaying left to right with glowing red eyes. Hairy Bigfoot beings. Monsters with glowing red eyes. The next night, all hell broke loose. The very beings I had been recording came to my home with lots of anger and aggression, hurling powerful low frequencies, doing fake owl calls, yelling, banging about, and the unique squeaky boy noises of the younger one was present too. At that exact time, 3 beings became present. Number 1. There was an odd hum in the atmosphere outside which I recorded with my window slightly ajar. Number 2. Evil sounding interference became very evident in the audio of whatever media I was viewing. At that time it was YouTube, but this evil interference extended over time to be present in all media, regardless of the source, Sky TV, any streaming content, and it was even present in an original DVD soundtrack playing on my laptop in another room. Number 3, I started to become massively affected by something I could not understand. I knew I was being affected greatly by this attack, and since I could always hear the big man chuntering, I called it Bigfoot voodoo. Now to the detail, the effects after only 2 nights of this, and if I recall correctly, there was 1 night's breather in between these 2 nights. I went from being a confident, brave person who at first was very angered by the audacity of these beings coming to intimidate me at my home, to someone who sensed the very real evil intent and felt very scared, very anxious to the point of panic, like fast breathing. I had feelings that my life was under threat and that they would very possibly bash in the double doors to my balcony, snap my neck, and be gone. After all, these beings don't exist, so why could they do this? So why couldn't they do this? Feelings of impending doom and overwhelming fear overtook my emotions. After all, these angry monsters were going mental, and I was scared what they were going to do. Another effect was the brain, where your head struggles to think, as a direct effect of this powerful weapon. Confusion and panic sets in, plus infrasound mixes the inner ear fluids in your ear, which makes things sound skewed. And with enough infrasound, your balance becomes affected. 3 words came into mind which best fits that initial evil attack, and these 3 words were perfectly fitting throughout this whole ordeal and still are even to this day. Evil, powerful, merciless. After only 2 nights of this, I wrote an email to Scott Carpenter, begging him to help me understand what on earth I had brought upon myself and what I could do to defend against it. Scott replied and sent me a prayer to rebuke this evil, but sadly, this did not work for me. But I will cover that in more detail also. I tried everything, as I'm sure you can appreciate when trying to fight something so powerful and something so evil. I described this odd hum and Bigfoot voodoo, asking if earplugs would work and if there was anything else I could do to resist these powerful effects. Scott directed me to his website, SasquatchAwarenessProject.com, which is where I learned about this acclaimed infrasound weapon. You will actually find me in the comments under the supernatural heading, or maybe the harassment heading, Rob Top, where I'm literally begging anybody to help me understand just what the F was going on after I realized that they had followed me to the next home, which was the roof apartment. They were now harassing me in the invisible or supernatural form, which made no sense to me. Regarding infrasound, you can black out your ears, which somewhat minimizes the effects by blocking out your ears does not stop you hearing the chuntering, evil, infrasound breathing beast, because you still hear through the bones in your head. Add to that a couple of pillows, and you still are victim to the effects, plus it's weird. You can still hear the chuntering monster. So, you cannot resist it by ear protection. It can and will be launched at your home by any means possible, and using the most effective channel to get to a person. My bathroom extractor fan had to be covered, for example, and I learned that I was affected a lot more in my large front room, which had large windows and a double door plus a further single door onto the balcony. There was no escape from its effects anywhere in my home. This is horrible, and it makes it so much harder to deal with since you cannot escape its powerful effects and retrieve your mind back. Plus, even before I knew anything about the tagging or hitchhiker effect, they seemed to know which room I was in. When laid in my bed, I had a whole cliff face adjacent, which enabled them to bombard me by launching it at the relevant window. I recall feeling like I was being vibrated in my bed, prompting me to relocate, but there was no escape. I figured out that my hallway was the place where I suffered its effects the least. So, to summarize here, having a room between you and the infrasound helps a lot, but again, it does not stop the weapon. I noticed a pattern that when I would lay down to rest, they would kick off and harass me, causing me to become scared and not feel safe. I would therefore get back up. This played into their hands because they could do the dirty deed and affect me the most. I always have my phone recording audio and me laid there scared, anxious, and downtrodden, talking into it so as to document my fears and act as a record what happened to me if I was to be victim to them and killed. The harassment was that evil. Very hard to deal with, and during a lot of these personal recordings, I am suffering crazy levels of anxiety and panic breathing. I learned eventually that soundproofing my windows really helped. I had a full roll of loft insulation, air mattresses, and a whole lot more up against my bedroom window in Matlock. I avoided my front room, and slowly but surely the realization dawned on me that I had released upon myself something very terrible, nothing short of the beast from hell. I realized I had to move, which is witness to the power of the effects of this evil, underhand, scumbag weapon, infrasound. So you may think a solution would be to just go out, perhaps escape, to visit a member of my family once we was allowed this, the scamdemic, remember? Alright, so you're locked up. Wrong. That's when I started to notice that they would turn up where I went, locally and still in their vicinity, that is. I would escape in my car to a peaceful, secluded little spot in Bakewell, for example, which is not always convenient to try and do because I was not myself and greatly affected by them infrasounding my mind for countless hours, remember. I'd be sat in my car trying to piece together my mind, and before long I would start to feel uncomfortable and hear the evil heading my way. I kid you not. I had this happen a lot, yet I still had no idea about the full level of the tagging ability these beings can have on a victim, especially one who had been infrasounded so intensely. Being infrasounded so intensely also seemed to open me up to be greatly in tune with them. I could hear them incoming and figure out where they was around me. It was all very intense and horrible. No escape. I borrowed my stepbrother's key and escaped there late one night, a distance of about 3 miles, but still very much in the cryptid hot spot zone, only to be there less than 10 minutes before hearing all the familiar fake owl calling right outside, resulting in me becoming confused, scared, and laying on the floor with all the lights turned off. My ever-reliable intuition sensing and hearing a presence right outside, making me conclude that I may as well return back home if I'm feeling that same fear here. It was at this point that it all became too crazy sounding, and it was not worth trying to explain what I was victim to. It took so much effort, and I knew how it sounded. It truly was me alone against a team of evil cryptids. They were intent on driving me out of my home. I recall laying on my hallway floor, scared, anxious, and talking into my recorder, trying to evaluate my predicament. It went something like this. I was up against a team of beings that I could not fight physically, that I could not outrun if I was chased, that I could not communicate with in any way, or that's what I thought at the time. I could not bribe them with money. I would gift them food, which they would either not take, or take then carry on getting me. I had said sorry both out and about when they were around me, via mind speak, but that had no effect. I could not get help from the police, and there was little anybody else could do. Plus, I did not want to involve anybody else in my horrific nightmares, since I did not know if these beings would then harass them as well. They were using a hard-to-detect weapon. It's even harder to understand and harder still to prove in any way, yet it had a terrible effect. I was tagged and there was no escape, went out and about. Nowhere in my home was a safe place, free from the effects. They would locate me from room to room. The harassment occurred night and even in the daytime. Nothing I could do resisted the effects. You still hear it through the bones in your head. Prayers did not work. Mantras did not work. Nothing stopped it. It was like a deranged, obsessed, supremely powerful beast that delighted in torturing me to the point where I was begging for enough time to get my head around my own death. never was any mercy or forgiveness shown. If I would have kept a written account of all this, I kid you not when I say it would be a notepad nearly as thick as the Bible. I hope the level of torment is starting to come across here, man. For anybody who thinks that I am a weak person or that I could have handled it better, then I say to you that you would have suffered the terrible effects of the infrasound too. Speak then. The fear frequency. I will now detail the sightings which I had up to this 3-month point, being driven from my home of 8 years in Matlock. I've had lots of sightings, none of them epic by any means, but here are the ones up to this point. Number 1. I've seen what I put down to being a shadow man crossing the road when out on my e-bike. This is before I even knew anything about these beings being in the area. This shadow man disappeared halfway across the road at a distance of about 400 meters in front of me. It was a video put up by a woman who runs a British Bigfoot channel with the title 8-foot-tall monkey-faced man sighted on Robin Hood Lane. What Standwell? That prompted me to start placing records. I had no idea of the dangers of this, and I have reached out to that woman asking her to warn others and not encourage people. She actually called me a liar and a hoax, believe it or not, and ridiculed every aspect of my ordeal. I think I might know who that is. Number 2, while placing a recorder behind a fence post on Crumford Canal, I confusingly turned around to count which post. Forgot to count, so turned around again. I then turned off my bike light and shone a torch to the right, then to the train line on the left. A mucky, cream-colored, hairy belly could be seen peeping out at me. Then going back in only to come back out from behind the tree. I had it pinned in my torchlight whilst stood on the canal path. The being was to my left, over the fence and about 40 or 50 meters away. I was not scared. It was dusk and I calmly dropped some grapes I had on the floor and shouted, "Food!" Food, as I normally did, before pushing my bike away and then slowly riding it away. I then called my dad and spoke to my stepmother to tell her I had seen a Bigfoot. I did not see its face, though folks, but I figure it was a Bigfoot based on the sighting on Robin Hood Lane. I told them I had seen what I had been recording, which was listened to, and it fascinated us. Number 3, another time I was on the same canal path, placing a game camera facing the train line, when I noticed 3 figures coming my way, but they never materialized, which was odd. One was very tall, one very chunky, and I don't recall the other one's body shape. I'm putting 2 and 2 together here, but I firmly believe that was 3 of these beings. Number 4, when I was placing a recorder up Darwin Forest, where all these odd structures were, I noticed in my peripheral vision, in fact it was whilst glancing behind me, a figure darting from one tree to another. Clearly a young adult, in size and very dark in color, possibly even in this black shadow form, which is the form I have seen them in for nearly every time. Number 5, that same time and only a number of minutes after that, whilst pushing my e-bike and feeling a little afraid, I briefly seen a large male coming up between the power lines. I dropped the recorder on a wall and got out of there. The recorder supports my account because it is approached only moments after I leave the capture's content the whole night through. Number 6, during the harassment, when infrasound was launched from the cliff behind my home, I got to see a young-looking one's head retreat from off the cliff face. This was a black shadow form, though with no discernible features. Number 7, I used to regularly just appear in my second bedroom window and light up the cliff with one of my powerful torches. I'd put them under pressure doing this and hear movement and sticks breaking and even falling. One time I could see what looked like a large, beastie-looking head, ugly, with a curl to its hair. It stayed so still that I began to discount it, but when I checked later, it was gone. Number 8. I've already mentioned the 2 red-eyed swaying Bigfoot opposite my home the night before my ordeal began. Well, I also witnessed a large being with red eyes looking back at me a further 3 times. Twice is when I sat on a bench recording, hoping one would run up on me. It was on the train line looking at me intently. Twice that happened, and I struggled understanding what I was looking at the time. Once more, I was sat in my car where I'd been leaving my recorders on Lee Road, trying to familiar myself with the sounds there when I noticed 2 red-looking dots, which confused me at first, and I was trying to work out if it was somehow a reflection of a red light, what I had on my dashboard. It was 2/3 the way up the field right next to me and dead eyeing me, or looking intently, shall we say. Number 9. While my stepbrother stopped at mine one night, we had a massive black one step into the light of a street lamp, arms crossed, just stood there on the hillside. It was him who spotted it, and he went on to shine his laser into its eyes, lol. There was a crazy amount of orb phenomenon going off on that hillside. Number 10. When I was returning home after visiting my stepbrother in Chesterfield, I was driving my car at the start of what is called the Matlock Mile, a flat mile of straight road, when I noticed a light that lit up in my driver's door mirror, to then witness a large cone-headed Bigfoot, which lit what I would describe as an orb of white light in its hand, as if to get my attention. The orb went out for me. The orb went out for me to then witness the head and shoulders, no neck, go across the back of a large gray road sign, which was about 1.5 meters across. I went to that sign and my head just reached the very bottom of that gray road sign, making this being about 8.5 feet tall. This is done to intimidate me, in my opinion, especially considering I was driving home only to be harassed. They love the water, and I often hear one in the river having what sounded like a lot of fun. That concludes my sightings up until that point, but stay tuned for the many other oddities and sightings during the next episode at the roof apartment. The beginning of me getting to witness what was clearly the supernatural element of these monsters. People may at this point be wondering just what had caused them to go to such lengths to harass me, and I will give you my honest explanation that makes sense to me. I was quite reckless during my research, and on reflection I did many things that will have pissed them off. Every recorder I placed was found and handled, and rather than just destroy it, they seemed to have one near it so it could mask out it from hearing too much. About 8 recorder placements, all found. I had an electric mountain bike, and I would enjoy riding it late at night once all the traffic had died down. I would venture into their woods, photographing structures and talking about them. I ignored a bluff charge, ignored the red eyes looking at me with intent, and I also ignored massive frequency blasts made at me twice while on my e-bike, and from the top of a small cliff area, ×2. I believe I know where they live, which is an old abandoned railway tunnel that is not easily accessible to people unless you skip along the railway line and trek across the face of a cliff. High Tor Cliff in Matlock, Bath. I believe they also live in the old troglodyte mines in Matlock, Bath, which are also pretty inaccessible to humans and somewhat forgot about. Plus a swampy section of the old abandoned garden center on the A6, which borders Crumford Canal. People have the right to think I brought a lot of this on myself, and I know some will think that, but I never wished them any harm, and the fascination got the better of me. I hate them now, and I have no loyalty to them now, so I have no problem giving their habitat location away and exposing them for being so very biggest mistake of my life having anything to do with these beings, and people need to be warned. There's no glory in my account, and I'm not ashamed to say that I have been bullied and even broken by these satanic, black-hearted, sadistic beings. I want to warn others, and I can only do that by being honest about my own mistakes so that others can learn from them. Right on to the crazy episode, and since this is correct and true, a lot can be learned with regard to the crazy abilities these beings have. One more thing which is very relevant and will help you understand just why this ordeal escalated to this point and beyond, and that's the reaction I had to all this evil harassment and continual, merciless bullying. My anger and my hurling abuse at these scumbags, laughing in their face, calling them every offensive insult I could think of, and spitting right at them, etc., etc. The thing is, you've got to understand the level of torment they put me under here. It was horrific, and it was a one-sided fight where I could do nothing in retaliation. I could not defend against this dirty, low-down scumbag weapon being constantly used against me. Well, after a certain amount of this Well, after a certain amount of this, my head blew up and I became filled with anger. Plus, I went out there and said, "If you want me, I'm here. Kill me now or leave me alone. Otherwise, leave me alone." Regardless to say, they took no notice and continued to infrasound me into oblivion. It would literally blow my head up and I would get angry. I would kick off and get very angry. In fact, at one point in Matlock, it was the only enjoyment I had left, abusing the evil, merciless attackers that were using a low-down weapon I could do nothing against. A scumbag weapon that left me angry. I did not respect the way they went about this one bit. Before I left Matlock, it was getting very intense and I was fearing for my life. Something was going to give, and there was only going to be one loser, as I'm sure you would agree that that's me. I was saying things like, "You foul beast, you should have been drowned at birth," and similar things. Don't judge me, people. You did not suffer this evil. I did, and it was hell. Anyway, I was made to pay for my abusive mouth. I thought I had escaped this evil. Moving day, hooray. Yet after only a couple of days, I began to feel uneasy at my next home. Odd, all too familiar frequencies became present outside my home. Next came the orbs, and then the walking and banging above me at night upon the roof. Impossible, I would tell myself. There's no way I'm going mad. Some nights, 200 angry bangs right above my head. Then came the interference, although I was so scared to hear it that I chose not to have any media playing out of fear of it being present. I began to question my own sanity at this point. I knew little nothing about the supernatural claims these beings have and did not think for 1 minute that they could have followed me to my next home. The only slight indication I had of this was one odd comment which stuck in my mind from Glenn of GPE on YouTube, where he said I should not kick their stick teepees down because they might follow me to my next home. Oh my God, what the actual F had I released upon myself here? How can it be on my roof, for God's sakes, in the daytime, invisible, yet able to be heard, stomp about, and infrasound my home while in this form? This is when I begged for insight in the comment section of Scott Carpenter's great website. You'll find me in the comments, confused and begging for understanding. I felt very confused, overwhelmed, and embarrassed to tell my family that I now thought it had followed me to this next home 12 miles away and could turn invisible. I was in denial, but it became more obvious that I was not free from this evil at all. In fact, I had moved into the roof section of this building, so it was now right above me, and it regularly had a younger one with it, which would also help locate me from room to room, and I later figured kept lookout for my return when I went out. A small teepee appeared in the trees, which were opposite. I now know that Chesterfield, where I moved to, also has these beings running riot once darkness drops. More on that later. I recall in Matlock being at my wit's end, and I had simply had all I could take of this evil one-sided fight. 3 months of it was very hard to deal with, but I had no choice. It took a little time for me to realize that they would not stop this and that it was going to destroy me if I did not escape it. Now, I had moved into a stupid roof apartment. We all know how these beings have no issues walking about and banging on people's roofs. I could handle that. Knowing me, I would just told them to F off. But the whole purpose of this evil beast being there was the continuation of the horrific infrasounding of me. My walls were now on a sloped angle, as were my windows. I tried black bags full of loft insulation, but the deranged beast would simply blast through the very structure of the roof. I recall Larry, who is now a friend from Canada, responding to my appeal on Sasquatch Awareness Project, calling me as I was battling this, and him telling me that whatever I did not want to piss off these beings. A bit late for that, I thought, as I thought about just how intense this had now become. He helped me understand just what I was up against. Supernatural, he explained. It could be right next to you and you would not know it. He also warned me that a guy reported one appearing in his front room before walking through a wall and gone. What the F? This is a nightmare now, and it had been notched up to levels I knew I would find very hard to cope with. I mean, who could cope with this? Ultimate enemy. Team of against just me. If I had company, it would ease off so as not to allow that person to witness this very real attack. Even a single night became a never-ending ordeal. I would dart from room to room and lay wherever I could. Bedroom, second bedroom, hallway, and behind the settee in my front room were my options. I would lay silent as a mouse, only to hear them figuring out where I lay, making their way to me, and the infrasound began. I noticed that my phone camera had a crazy amount of pixelation, and the worst place was actually the hallway, which was where I had thought I was safest. I would look out my window and see self-illuminating eyes looking back at me. They were not shy about letting me see that one again, that they was out in numbers to get me. I blasted out on my e-bike one time, and I heard a small being panic and rapidly retreat back into what I could only be described as some trees opposite my home. Turns out, that's all they need. Anyway, I went for a ride, which did give me a breather, but the minute I got home, it would arrive and continue. How the heck is this even possible? We were talking level 10 woo factor for it to even get up there. I noticed I was witnessing a lot of very odd flashes outside my home. I would be stood in my kitchen, then a flash outside. This is to do with them. My sister witnessed this also, and there appeared a small teepee in the trees opposite. Well, we all know what beings do these teepees, and I assure you it was cryptids attacking me, and not any demon or anything else. I'd rather have had a demon. So evil. Mind-blowingly so. It was at this time, or shortly after this time, actually, that they started harassing me at work. I'm talking about as I went to my garage in the morning, I would see self-illuminating eyes looking at me. I got hit or zapped by infrasound at my garage site, and it became a place that I'd not dare go. I caught one on camera only 15 feet away from me. I heard it, and about heading my way, started recording for my own safety because I was recently zapped in my garage. I had the sense to drive off, and noticed afterwards upon watching the crappy short videos that it is not there in the first, but it's only 15 feet away before I leave, and in this all too familiar black shadow form, which I kept mentioning. I would have to keep on the move at work, daring from location to location in my work's van. A few examples of it tracking me are when I was about to do one of my duties in Darley Dale at a complex called Underhall. Talking to my workmate, we both heard a being getting his breath back right next to us. At the depot, I'd be alone inside, only to hear walking and banging up on the roof. This happened 2 or 3 times. Another time I was stripping wallpaper inside an empty house, only to sense one outside before getting blasted a little by the scumbag weapon. This fog's getting really thick. This lens is probably getting covered, isn't it? I came across the field and launched what I would describe as a blast of frequency similar to that of an aeroplane engine. This physically hits you and affects you similar to the prolonged infrasound I've already described. I would arrive back from work, and within 10 minutes, boom, it was at me. How is this possible? Well, portals would fit the bill, or the odd flashes were certainly related to it, and the funky tricks it had to torture me with. Okay, I'm going to wipe out that lens and move, alright? I know it's getting wet because this is getting soaked. Give me a minute. That's quite the tangle you got going there. Holy fudge. Alright. It's definitely a long one, isn't it? This being could be in this supernatural form all night, and then the daytime it would continue. It certainly did not seem to struggle to hound me for an hour after hour. Are they supernatural? Yes, 100%. There's so much more to this hellish ordeal, but I recognize that it is getting rather long already, so I will aim to progress it at a more rapid pace, yet be sure to include the many important things I witnessed. This roof apartment was 4 months of hell. I would say Matlock was the worst because... What's that sound? I would say Matlock was the worst because they hit me with numbers. The interference was the worst, and it was shocked just how many got involved with harassing me. If I watch any of that back, I get traumatized in only a matter of minutes. It was horrific. Other things I tried at the roof apartment were disco lights in my window to get people looking up. Did little to nothing. I wrote a sincere apology which I recorded and played through my stereo. This did nothing, and proceeded to be a waste of words. I wrote and recorded my own prayer which I would leave playing. I also prayed and rebuked in Jesus' mighty name. I started this at Matlock, but once I got to see that it was a supernatural monster I was up against, I obviously hoped this would be the answer. I also played powerful prayers to rout demons, etc. on YouTube, which seemed to only anger the being somewhat, but not deter it in any way. I'd love to say that I did. I'd love to say that it did, but it simply did not. I was now battling something so incredibly powerful, and I could find no solution. I repeatedly kept trying everything. Positivity statements. I don't think the person who suggested this quite had a concept on the level of evil I was up against. It did nothing, of course. I've been run up on by one in the invisible form, and then went on to jump in a tree where it launched intense infrasound right at me while I was trying to lay a concrete path. This was terribly effective and caused me to suffer massive panic attacks plus anxiety. So much so I had to phone my foreman, who was in shock at how I was behaving. He agreed I could go straight home sick with stress and anxiety. I was off work for 4 months, 16 weeks, saying sorry in every way possible. Outside my home, and I braved going amongst them, did nothing. No mercy, no forgiveness, remember. Saying sorry in the form of a recorded apology I was advised to make. It did nothing, and was a waste of my words. Mind speak to repeatedly say sorry. Oh, mind speak to repeatedly say sorry. This seemed to calm the beast, and it felt like it was potentially being heard, but later realized that it would simply take advantage of me being close to it and blast me intensely. I'd beg it to stop and explain that I never meant them any harm. Not bothered. Made no difference. I would play powerful mantras to rid evil demons and spirits. This seemed to really wind it up, and you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. Made it angry. Maybe it was the fact that mantras are chanted 108 times. It did not work anyway. I was considering paying a witch doctor. I was running out of options. I didn't do that though, and I'm glad. It was attacking me with such deranged obsession that I recall wondering if my efforts had at some point worked and bound one of them away or something. I don't think that was the case though. Just evil as can be. Evil, powerful, and void of mercy, remember. 100% fittingly accurate words which still hold true even now, and it's the years since they first turned on me, or 1,000 days, however you want to look at it. That is crazy to me and wrong. I recall my brother and sister dropped me off, and as I was getting out of the car, a group of young children ran up behind me and blurted out, "Hey mister, you think there's a demon in them trees?" I told them to keep out. Kids don't mince the words and tell it as it is. It kept scaring them out of the trees. I felt like a cursed man, victim to the most evil attack by beings that should not even exist, never mind be here in the UK. I'll recall one of your videos, Steve, where you talked about one of your own possible explanations why governments don't address or acknowledge these beings, and that is that they fear the retribution, plus they can't control them. That is the nail on the head. I believe especially here in the UK where we have no weapons. I got the feeling that these beings would delight in running around snapping the necks of puny mankind. Scott talks about how these beings seem to be existing on the outskirts of society in ever-increasing numbers, as if waiting to pounce at some point in the future. I felt very vulnerable at the roof apartment after being told that they could appear inside someone's home then be gone. I would have audio recorders, cameras going inside my home as a deterrent. At Matlock, before I could strap the game camera to my window facing the cliff or have it on my balcony, but none of that was possible here living in the roof. I would wear a panic attack alarm on my wrist, and although I never really felt like any activity had been in my home, I don't think I had my missing punctuation. I would wear a panic alarm on my wrist, and although I never really felt like any activity had been in my home, I did think I had my bum cheeks pinched one time while laying face down on the bed. You can imagine the horror this put in my head. It all became more than any man could bear, and I had had enough. I had no answers, and my quality of life had become so poor that I craved and wanted to be dead. I'm not that way inclined, but I was suffering so terribly, and I had simply had all I could endure, especially considering the fact I had no answers. We came up with a plan of me not stopping there, but that failed to work because of the tagging phenomenon. I had a horrific night of harassment while at a hotel, believe it or not. These beings can get to a person pretty much anywhere. You asked me what I did to escape it, and the two things I found out that discouraged its continual attack is being among other people. The more people, the better. Then, I escaped my brothers, and although it or another one that was local, who knows, did at first try to continue to get me there, it backed off, and I believe it's because I was now sharing a house with two others. The only answer to being in for sounded is to get away from the location. Soundproofing and ear protection helps minimize the effects, but having your ears blocked comes with the consequence of you feeling vulnerable, especially when combined with an eye blackout wraparound, which I use to help me rest. Further sightings. Number one, my best sighting was when I was on my e-bike getting some escape from this evil and riding down a hill in the daytime at Holmbrook Valley Park in Chesterfield. I witnessed a massive donkey-sized being on all fours sprint across the field at a crazy fast speed, gray in color. I did not see its head because it had its head down, but my initial labeling of this being was a dog the size of a donkey, faster than I could ride on my e-bike by far. Number two, visited Lineker Woods in Chesterfield after I thought this had all ended to say sorry and make peace with them. On about the second or third visit, I got to see a teen one in black shadow form pass from left to right in front of me, about 30 meters in front of me. I also had one run up to me there in a quiet, non-threatening way, and I could hear it breathe in and out as it regained its composure. Number three, this should be number one in this list because it happened in Matlock a short while after I'd lived on the roof apartment when I stupidly jumped on my e-bike and ended up riding to my old area in Matlock via all the Cryptid Pass and passing their woods. Anyway, I made it all the way to Matlock, and it was while heading towards my father's in Matlock that I heard an unnerving aeroplane frequency heading my way. I called my stepmom and told her what was happening and said if anything happens to me, it's at the hands of these cryptids. I continued up the pond, though I could see what very possibly could be that same ugly head that kept motionless while on the cliff previously. If it was, it kept motionless once again, which seems an effective tool, resulting in me dismissing it and carrying on. Actually, this was after I had been at the roof apartment for a while, thinking about it because I recall it was getting very intense again and I was feeling like my life was in danger. I started my phone recording as a deterrent and recorded the odd phenomena of two orbs peeping from behind a tree I had not long since passed behind me. The next minute, I had a very angry adult male crashing through the shrubbery and small trees, the quarters of the way up the banking to my right. It looked to be in this black shadow form, and I recall thinking it looked like only the top half was visible. Only for it to somehow then be in front of me and having crossed the path and positioned itself down the step, banking in front and to my left. It had passed in front of me, in plain view, yet in visible form because 1 second was up and to my right, then in front, across the path, and down a step back to my left. I felt very threatened by this one. It was angry, and I tried once again to make peace. I felt an overwhelming sense that it wanted to run up behind me while I was pushing my heavy e-bike at snail's pace at this point up a very steep section of path leading to the road. I went into my dad's, showing my stepmom the footage, put my bike on charge so I could make it home, grabbed the small dog and walked to the park so as not to bring it to my dad's. I heard one making its way to me, yet couldn't see nothing. I ran across the nearby garden and jumped in the tree. I pulled up my phone recording, yet saw nothing to view. Stalemate for a short while before going back, getting on my e-bike and pedaling home with no further incident. Of course, once I arrived home, the scumbag weapon was at me. I continued to suffer harassment to this day, but to a lesser degree due to my home layout and location. I am, however, very suspect of just why they even continued to infrasound me here, and cancer-causing would not surprise me one bit. If what some claim is true, then I'm fooked. They are certainly evil enough to have such a black, cold heart that they would delight in my death. I've reached out to people who are in touch with these beings and asked them to communicate my sincere apologies and ask for it to stop. These beings simply lie and say it's not them doing it to me, but a dark entity. A load of crap that is. I know my attackers after all these countless hours. The figure I started as a correction at the beginning is conservative. That's how much of this I have been victim to. Think what you want. Whether you think I brought this on myself somewhat, but please understand I'm not a bad person, and I never wished them any harm. I was actually quite fond of these characters, and I only wish they had chucked the recorder in the river and not let me collect it back each time only to be fascinated listening back to it. I've read Scott Carpenter's book entitled The Nephilim Among Us, and my own hellish ordeal matches what he writes about numerous times. I'll once again include my lie detector test, and you're free to read my more detailed ordeal in part or full. I want to write up this more detailed account because I have witnessed so much. I want to warn others, plus shed light on the torturous abilities these beings have. It shocked me last time that one or two comments that I was... It shocked me It shocked me last time that one or two comments thought I was trolling you and listed odd reasons like I sounded too American in my description or something that made no sense. So, this is the accuracy and power within my words. I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is, and if anybody wants to pay half the fee direct to a UK professional lie detector test company, not me, then I will pay the other half. Maybe there's a rich guy who wants to authenticate all this crazy sounding shit, and I would welcome that. They can set the questions based on my account, and I will once again take a test over this and pass it. It would be a big up yours to these evil cryptids too, bringing to light their evil ways and infrasounding abilities. I know this is all crazy sounding, right, but I'm telling every detail straight, no exaggeration, and certainly no added bullcrap. I do not lie. One last thing I want to address, is that it was due very wrong of the channel that straight away called me a liar and a hoax, and then went on to continue to acknowledge any of my hellish ordeal, instead ridiculing me and even dismissing a lie detector test. How wrong, how horrible, and that person should be warning people about these beings. I wish I'd been warned. I admire Scott Carpenter and applaud his approach. Oh, sorry, I'm babbling. I admire Scott Carpenter and applaud his approach, caring enough to warn others. And Steve is an amazing guy who's helping us all understand something that we should already be made aware of. Kind regards, and if there are more questions, please let me know. I have loads of long-winded, boring evidence of these beings, but I've learned not to do blob squatches, since there is little to no point. I will link a number of photos which show the infrasound defense efforts made at different homes. If anybody is interested in my interview where I chose to go on camera, then maybe Steve might pin it as the top comment, but if not, go to Hidden Existence and scroll back 2 years to find UK cryptid harassment. Below is the window protection at the different homes now. It ain't pretty, but it is very real. I have 1,001 pieces of evidence to this jigsaw. Do I have the golden shot? No. You might have just won the award for the longest email sent in to date. And if anybody out there is going through something similar to this, anybody, no matter how crazy you think it might sound to all the people here, share it, all right? Just get it out, share it, okay? It's not a common item to receive something like this or experience like this. But it certainly sounds alarming, and the man has offered up all details, his name, where he lives. He sent over his lie detector test. Side note, the internet Wi-Fi I managed to use here was not powerful enough to pull up the photos today. Okay, you guys, I apologize. I can't pull them up. And when I load this video, what I do is I have my laptop on the boat, and I got my editing program, sit there with Adventure Dog having lunch or whatever, and I edit up the video, and then I managed to leave it behind my friend's fishing lodge on the coffee table underneath the closed deck, and leave it on load there. I don't know how many hours it took yesterday to load up, so I can't do the photos on this video today. I'm sorry. I'll have to do it next time when I get back. I think I'm going back tomorrow, late tomorrow. But anyway, that is one hell of a nightmare story, man. That's a nightmare. I don't know what to say. I mean, I am definitely not familiar with the supernatural attacks. I don't think I want to be familiar with it. I know people like Mike Patterson, I think it's on Ontario side. He has documented a shit pile of the word supernatural experiences that he's documented and seen and been sharing with people. Scott's up to date on a whole pile of it. There's a lot of people that have seen and experienced a lot of crazy frickin' shit that we can't wrap our noggins around, right? It's quite the share, man. Quite the nightmare. I hope it gets better. I don't know what I would do. I mean, picture it, you guys. What would you guys do? What would you do? All right? It's amazing. You know, there's a bunch of stuff about to come down the pipe here fairly soon. It's gonna be a bit of a shit show going on, I can guarantee you that. And I guess why I'm saying that is because it relates to what I'm about to say is it's amazing the effort put forth to keep all of this under wraps. Is it not? You gotta admit, the effort that has been laid down to attempt to keep everybody second guessing is amazing when it comes to this topic and more. It's amazing to me. It's amazing the effort put forth, isn't it? Isn't it? They have the dirtbag mainstream science people are really motivated to keep this all away from us. Why is that? Why is that? Huh? Why is that? Keep your enemies close, right? Keep your enemies close. Is that why there's a handful of absolute morons who they've given most of the lens time to, and the effort that they have been putting forth to keep you all going in circles is amazing to me. I don't think it's going to be, they're not going to be able to keep you guys duped for much longer, from what I understand what's coming down the pipe. And they are going to be exposed. I got nothing to do with this one, but I'm jumping on it. Whatever I can do to help this movement, that's for sure. There's a lot of very intelligent, very well informed people with a lot of information to share with you who are, they are about to attack back and expose the people who have been keeping all of this away from us. But anyway, I better get going. I don't even know how long that we've been reading this email. That was a doozy, isn't it? But a quick side note, I was driving down the road, these logging roads, with my friend last evening. We're driving around, had the Rubies with us, and we were looking at bears and stuff and setting up trail cameras he's got on a couple of remote trails over here. And we're talking about it. He says, you get a lot of traffic with that Sasquatch stuff, don't you? And he kind of giggled. And he is a past hunting guide, past lifelong faller, and present fishing guide. Been running around the woods a lot longer than me. And I just looked at him and went, yeah. He goes, well, you know, I'm just, and he's giggling as he's talking. It's fine, I don't care, you can't offend me. But he's saying how, he says, you know, I'd have to see one to believe it myself. I'm like, oh, fair enough, man. You and millions of others, no big deal. And I told him, I said, I don't give a shit if you believe it or not. He goes, oh, I know. And he's even got my book. And, but then he goes on to say, well, you know, I have heard quite a few things in the forest over the years I couldn't explain. Right? And I go, like what? Well, you know, it's some weird huffing and huffs and weird sounds. But I have to see one. Right? It's amazing, right? How many people there are. I know a lot of my friends are in that same boat. I gotta see one myself. Okay, so if you're standing over there 100 yards and I'm yelling at you that I saw a massive grizzly bear coming your way behind you, but it's out of sight now, are you gonna believe me? That I saw that monster grizzly bear coming your direction, but you can't see it? Are you gonna believe me? Pretty sure 100% of my friends are gonna go, yeah. Okay, then why don't you believe me when I tell you I saw this being up on a rock 15 meters above me looking at me? Why don't you believe me? Why can't you accept that from me? You know what I mean? To my friends. It's weird how many people's minds are programmed. Maybe it's the way they're born, their genetics. I haven't a clue, but it's amazing to me how many people's minds go instant block when it comes to this topic. Nope, block. Nope. Don't believe it. Nope. No matter what you tell them. And I even told them about the DNA. I go, well, they got a whole pile of DNA. How'd they get that? Still giggling. Whereas if if your mind was open to anything, your mind you would think would go, what? They have DNA? Do you see what I mean when you're reading people and when I pick or choose who I will engage with this topic? When I say to somebody, they've got DNA, and they still continue to giggle, all right, I'm out. There's going to be no sense in going forward sharing anything about this topic with that particular person. It's not going to happen. Their mind is absolutely blocked, chopped. It's odd, right? It's an odd thing to witness. Man, it's so weird being up here. I've never been up here before. I've never seen my fishing spots behind me from land, ever. Anyways, I better get the dog going. She's gonna go bonkers sitting there waiting for me to do this. And maybe I'll be able to record her reaction when we come across some bear scent. This ought to be good. We'll be back shortly again, you guys. Whoa. And that is the bear alarm. Scared the shit out of me. You just exploded, crazy dog. Alright? Alright, we'll get you out of here. Alright. Did you get him? Did you get that bear? Did you get him? There you go. There's a hair on her back. You got him.